The Night by Noble is probably the ocarina that I've recommended the most. It's an amazing starter ocarina. Will their recently released Soprano C live up to the same standard? Let's find out. The Soprano Night by Noble is a 12-hole ocarina in the key of C. It's 1 octave above the standard range of Alto C, which the normal Night by Noble is in. It's $27 on Amazon, whereas the most comparable soprano ocarina, the Brio by Songbird, is $25 on their site. $22.50 if you use code Andy10. Here's a quick scale. What are my thoughts? First, the tone is phenomenal. Here's a quick comparison between the Night by Noble and the Brio. Their breath pressures are slightly different, but their tones are more or less the same. One thing to note is that the Night by Noble does require a tiny bit more breath pressure. This is surprising because the Alto C Night by Noble is actually relatively low breath pressure, at least on the lower end of medium breath pressure. So in terms of tone and breath pressure, fantastic. Though because of the high breath pressure, it is quite loud. And for soprano ocarinas, you actually want them quieter for indoor practice, but this is great for outdoor performing. Ergonomically, this is significantly larger than a typical Soprano C ocarina. It's got a lot more mass to it on the tip, fitting in with the design language of Night by Noble and everything. The extended tip right here is probably to keep in line with the shape of the Alto C Night by Noble as well. It's a very signature and iconic shape in my opinion. So ergonomically, because this ocarina is a little bit bigger than most soprano ocarinas, it's a little bit easier for my big meaty claws to hold. But that said, if you want the smallest ocarina you can possibly hold for portability, the Brio is significantly smaller and does weigh significantly less. I don't have the exact grammage or poundage, but the Soprano Night by Noble does feel to be about 33% heavier than the Brio. Aesthetically, I really love the black finish on here. I mean, it's a very similar reason why I love the Night by Noble and the Bravura. The black plastic color looks really, really nice, and I do especially like how matte the Nobles are. There's something about the matte black that just feels more professional than your typical brightly colored plastic ocarina. So I actually have the question of, does the Night by Noble Soprano feel like a Night by Noble ocarina? In terms of aesthetics and ergonomics, they're very, very similar, but their tones are rather different. They have slightly different breath pressure identities, with the soprano needing a little bit more air. I will play the high C on the Alto C and the low C on the soprano and ask you to guess which is which. I think it's quite obvious which is which. The first was the soprano, the second was the alto. As you can tell, the soprano does have a significantly brighter sound compared to the Alto Night by Noble. And that's to be expected with soprano ocarinas in general. I just wanted to consider, like, do these feel like they're a family? Aesthetically, yes. In terms of how they play, one's an alto, one's a soprano. They have their differences. I was just curious. I've already started discussing comparisons with the Brio, but we'll go more in depth now. The Brio is old reliable for me as it comes to soprano ocarinas. I've had this little guy for around 7 years. I'm old, oh my god. I've played it at so many cons. The tiny size and the strong sound make this a really perfect portable powerhouse. Does the Knight by Noble edge it out? Aesthetically, I prefer the Knight by Noble, but I prefer the Brio because it is significantly lighter. The black matte finish is nice and feels professional, and the signature Noble shape is iconic, but the Brio just is a bit more functional because it weighs so much less. It's not a huge difference, but it is noticeable if you're gonna wear it around your neck all day. In terms of sound, the Knight by Noble is actually a little bit louder. If you're using it to perform outdoors, this would be preferable because you want a louder soprano ocarina if you're outdoors or in a crowded convention center. However, for indoor practice, you want a quieter soprano ocarina because they can be very loud. Anytime I play a soprano ocarina in my house, my cat Momo will walk up to me and start yelling at me because he wants to kill the bird that I'm holding. It's not a bird, Momo, it's a little goose. Ocarina means little goose. Maybe it is a bird. But I digress. I would rate the Knight by Noble and the Brio pretty much equally in terms of how much I like them. I just think they're for slightly different purposes. Functionally, the main thing I'm thinking about is the weight and the volume. This one's a little bit heavier and therefore a little less comfortable to wear around the neck, but is a bit louder and I prefer the aesthetics. The Brio is a little bit quieter, I'm a little more accustomed to playing it, and it's a little bit lighter to wear around the neck for a long period of time. As it relates to playing in conventions, these are equally good. But I have more plastic soprano ocarinas to test, so we'll do a more in-depth comparison of them all in a future video. Functional preferences aside, the main consideration for me is that the Knight by Noble is $27 and the Brio is $22.50 if you use code Andy10 on Songbird. $5 really is not that much of a difference, but if your budget's really tight, it can be. Is the Knight by Noble Soprano C for you? At $27, it's on the expensive end for a plastic soprano ocarina, but $27 really is not that much, especially considering how good of an instrument this is. That said, the Brio is cheaper at $22.50 if you use code Andy10 at checkout at Songbird. And these two ocarinas are equal quality, just have some different characteristics. Therefore, the key factors in deciding whether or not this ocarina is for you are aesthetics, the weight differential, differences in volume, and price. In any case, the Soprano C Knight by Noble is a very good ocarina and I do recommend it. But I also recommend other plastic Soprano C ocarinas at a similar price point, such as the Brio. And I also recommend that you check me out on Patreon, patreon.com/Andy Cormier, as well as watching my video on the tiniest ocarina Songbird has to offer, the Infinitesimal. Otherwise, leave a like, subscribe for more, comment your plastic soprano ocarina of choice, watch that video next, and I'll see you next time. Happy tootin'.